Welcome back to another episode of the Nick Cage Fight Podcast, where we catch the faintest scent of a Nick Cage film from up to a mile away and relentlessly hunt it down so that we can properly explain it to you. We do this because we're the one outlet Kanye turned down when we requested an interview with him. So here we are. I am one of your hosts, Josh, and I'm joined as always by Rich and Ryan. How are we?
I'll get you yet, Yeezy. I mean, if only because he's going to burn every other bridge. Well, I guess he'll never burn that Joe Rogan bridge, so I don't know.
That's borderline impossible.
I mean, it's probably, well, the publicity from having him on the pod would have probably been good, but considering the fact that he has had to get removed from like both InfoWars and Tim Pool's bullshit, I don't think we'd make it through the whole interview. So
I think I would just have, I think I would just be like, Kanye, I have one question for you.
You just got to do it like an Eric
Holocaust.
Andre. Oof.
No, that is exactly the opposite
question.
way you need to open.
Actually, just let him go for 30 minutes.
It's more likely he'd fucking spike that football before you got your first question out in the first place. So
There's two strategies you could take with a Yee interview, and it's you either got to do a Nardwar at him or you got to do an Eric Andre at him.
Okay, yeah.
I don't even think Nardwar could disarm him at this point. Eric Andre has a shot. So we're here to wrap up our review of the USS Indianapolis Men of Courage 2016 bizarrely R-rated film.
I still can't believe that this is R-rated.
Is Jaws R? Because
I believe so.
Okay, all right. I thought Jaws might have been a PG because,
well, I'm gonna look it up now because
Jaws has some more obvious gore in it than this film does.
Right, but with the lack of a PG-13 rating at that time, I could see it being rated PG.
Yeah,
that's true.
It is PG. Jaws was PG.
All right, but this is 2016.
Well then.
This film has no business being on this part of the scale.
No, zero.
So when we last left all of our very interesting characters and their various subplots, the Indianapolis...
Did you just pluralize Tom Sizemore as multiple characters?
Yes. I make no apologies. The Indianapolis has gone down. The men have abandoned ship. And there's sharks in the water. All the elements that really you need to make an exciting film. So let's see how they fumble it. The very next morning, we actually get the first shark attack. We get a card saying day 1, July 30th, 1945. 902 men remaining. Supplies, 2 days worth. Yeah, the shark attack is some really bad wannabe Jaws shit as 3 sailors clinging to a piece of drift get attacked. It's brief bad CGI. We get more script over the scenes indicating that there are 2 groups, Group A and Group B, about a mile apart in the open ocean. They're trying to get organized. One of the officers, which we haven't mentioned until now, there's another subplot with an asshole officer that nobody likes, who
just seems to materialize like after the ship sinks. Like I have not seen him before outside.
He's the guy who breaks up the birthday party.
Yeah,
I didn't even know it was a birthday party.
Yeah, he's also the guy who don't they like spit in his food and then put like hot sauce in his coffee?
I think they spit in Cage's pie and put hot sauce in this guy's coffee.
Oh, they spit in Cage. Oh, right, because Cage says, "What do you put in your delicious pie?" And he's like, "It's a family secret."
Yeah, it's a weird throwaway kind of laugh. But this guy, I will give this movie credit for one thing regarding the asshole officer. So I'm brushing off the subplot, but I gotta say, this guy has been in like 2 or 3 scenes up until this point. 3 scenes, I think, total. And it does a great job in a short period of time establishing this man as a complete asshole. The first time we see him, he's introducing himself to Cage and has to name drop his father, who's like an admiral or some shit. The second scene is where he drinks the hot sauce coffee. And the third scene is where he breaks up the birthday party where somebody's actively mocking him. I think it might be Bama. And this is the very next time we see him. He is like in a raft by himself, I think, at this point. And he's dictating commands to the group that he's a part of. Namely, first of all, for every able-bodied man to get out of the rafts and have it only be for officers and injured people. And also, he wants all of the supplies that they have on his raft. So pretty transparent coward, but I'm in charge trope shit happening here. Still, like I said, effectively set up. I'll give credit where credit's due. You know how this guy is going to handle this tragedy from a mile away.
We did gloss over another like establishing scene too of the ring, the guy who stole the ring, who is like was betting on the fight. He was trying and I believe failing to start a craps game when the ship blew up. So another piece of
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Again, I mentioned before, I don't give a shit about the subplots in this movie, but
I was just mentioning it's there, you know.
No, you're right, and I don't want to gloss over it because there's actually another thing we see. First of all, the craps game, I think he very successfully gets up. Like dudes are playing dice when the ship gets hit with torpedoes. But before that, he's like recording like what money he has on the streets, right? He's like $5 to this guy, $10 to this guy. And he pulls out the ring that he picked up after the fight and goes, what are you worth? Are you worth $850? Which I didn't bring it up at the time, but I do want to congratulate you, Rich, because when you're like, just call out how much you're in debt and you guys haggled over what would be a reasonable price at this point. I think it's about $1,000 that the dude's in debt.
Okay.
Because he's going over like who owes him money and it's not large sums. And he's like, I hope this ring is worth $850. So I think $1,000 was the mark on this guy's debt.
Right. So, and I will say this entire part of the movie where they are lost at sea, it felt like a fever dream to me. It was so slow and boring. And I don't remember too much of what happened.
Almost nothing happens.
It was less boring than the rest of the movie. At least there were sharks, man. At least we had some stakes. Beforehand, we had zero stakes. The one time we had stakes in the film before the ship gets fucking blown up was a total red herring where a merchant vessel almost got just demolished. So,
so we're boring with sharks, which like...
Yeah. Which is a terrible crime.
It didn't do much for me, to be perfectly honest.
The biggest
and so again,
crime,
this whole hour of the movie, this part of the movie lasts a fucking hour. And we are going to go over it in like 17 minutes because nothing goddamn happens.
I think that's charitable. 17 minutes seems like that's a lot of conversation for a lot of nothing.
Like the best part of this movie is the last 15 minutes that could have been an entire movie, just that part. And they condensed it down to nothing because sharks. Like I'm trying to think, was it like the 30th anniversary of Jaws or something? And they were trying to cash in on that sweet, sweet Jaws money or something?
No, that was way earlier, like 10 years earlier at least.
So again, like at this point, I'm paying attention because now there's sharks involved. We have the film established for us that there's two groups, but almost immediately after they establish that there's two groups, it looks like Cage and Sizemore find each other, but they're separate from both of the groups, Group A and Group B.
So there's a Group C as well of
they don't define it as a group because it's just two people, but those two people are
the people that we
Cage
care
and
about.
Tom Sizemore. Yeah. There's one group and then just two collections of individuals that nobody gives a shit
so
about.
there's two collections of individuals. We're just like, all right, sharks, and then Tom Sizemore and Nick Cage were like, oh no, sharks.
So also, by the way, this scene with Cage and Sizemore might be the best one in the film. Also, the only one that is even going to make a ripple on most unhinged scene, but it's not going to be specifically about Cage's performance, but Sizemore's performance, because it looks like in the damage that was occurring to the ship, Sizemore had part of one of his legs blown off, apparently. And we know this because his one leg is very bloody, but he's clutching his like boot and the stump of his leg that got blown off, like holding it like a newborn baby, which is insane. As he's rambling about, by the way, he also had a kid that was born. That this is a subplot I'll give some weight to because it's Sizemore's subplot, but like his kid was born at one point, like right set off on this mission. I do have a note. I don't know if this is necessarily an example of good acting, but it's fucking something. And I'll take it in this movie for sure.
It's somebody showing emotion. So cool.
Absolutely. And then we get the shitty CGI in this movie is the worst. It breaks your immersion immediately, and you'd think they'd have the decency to confine it just to the scenes with shark attacks, but no. We had a weird CGI scene of a plane maybe looking for survivors, but it turns out the external shots of the plane is bad CGI. But we get an internal shot and it looks like they're actually looking for an entirely different group of people that survived a plane going down. So this is primarily to establish that this mission was so secret that nobody even knows to look for these guys, which is a problem because immediately
we really
thereafter,
didn't think this one through as a country, I feel.
Yeah, we rarely fucking do. So why would we when we literally the only people in history that utilized nuclear munitions in a war? I don't know. I would give that any more thought than we usually do. But yeah, you're right. We basically abandoned 900 dudes to their death by slow shark attacks. So speaking of, we get another shark attack. More guys get got. Are they main characters, side characters? Who gives
Doesn't
a
matter.
shit?
Does not matter.
Who gives a shit? We do get the ship's chaplain is like swimming to various dead bodies bobbing in the water and giving very Catholic last rites as sharks sort of swim around him. He blesses himself to kind of make it seem like he's about to get eaten, but he doesn't get eaten at this point. When the sharks attack, one of the black sailors in that group like just fucking swims away, and it works because he gets away and runs into Cage and Sizemore. Also, by the way, this is a minor, the minor being a relative term, minor side character who's always like writing. He's like a writer. He writes down stories or poems or some shit, but he's always writing, even when they're in the water. He's writing shit. But at this point, Cage takes the smaller raft that he had gotten to go to find the group of people, and he leaves the writer minor character to watch after Sizemore and keep shooting him up with morphine. So
that's how I want to go.
Yeah, which again, and Sizemore, all of the good scenes in this really have Sizemore in them, because we get another pretty good one where, you know, Sizemore's still like thrashing around. He has his leg blown off, and the sailor is trying to distract him by reading some of his stuff. And Sizemore, after he gets like 2 lines in, he's like, I'm fucking dying. You're going to have to do better than that. Which is great. It's a good scene. Probably one of the better scenes in the film.
Yeah.
So Cage actually makes his way back over to them with more guys and supplies at this point. And we get another bit of text on the screen placing us in time. Day 2, July 31st, 1945. 698 men remaining. Supplies 1 day's worth. So Cage takes some time now to write another letter to his wife, Lois. I think it's Louise. And the men share a can of Spam. We get
delicious.
Yeah. Well, they're all like, this is fucking phenomenal. Which if you're stuck on the ocean and rationing supplies, I believe that Spam would be pretty good at this point.
Yeah.
So we cut back to whatever group Bama's a part of, and a guy goes to puke over the side of the raft. This is one
that got me. This is one that got me.
And the guy goes to puke over the side, just gets snatched by a shark, a bad CGI shark, but it's so quick.
It's so quick. This
It's
again,
so quick.
this is the jump scare that like actually like I'm watching. I'm just like, whoa, okay.
Very, very, very funny in retrospect. I know I got you at the time, Rich, but
No, it is very funny because it's like it's so obviously going to happen, because this movie does a bad job of lulling you into a false sense of security by having all of these guys in the water and like sharks about, and they're not attacking anybody. But since it does that so much, you know that the people who are on the raft and who have to leave the raft for whatever reason, they're the ones who are going to fucking die.
I do want to take a moment now to describe these rafts, because I'm assuming what we're doing here with these episodes is a public service. You don't have to watch this movie. You can just hear 3 assholes clown on it instead of watching it yourselves. But I want to, raft is putting the wrong image in your mind if you're not going to watch this film, which I recommend that you stick to that plan. But this is basically like a styrofoam frame with like a canvas net in the middle. So it's not a raft, but of course, even with that setup where like a shark could just come up and chomp the canvas net that they're standing in, that never happens in the film. So
That would
like
be
I
too
said,
ambitious.
it would be too cool. It would be too cool for this film. That being said, and they don't do a good job of playing this up either. That's gotta fucking suck. Like a couple of days in ocean water where you literally can't stay out and get dry. You're gonna have some real mundane health issues with that.
Yeah.
You're gonna have fucking cracked skin and salt water in the wounds and shit.
Yeah, I thought that was going to play a much bigger role, and it's like,
Well, I mean,
they
a good
are-
portion of
are
the actual
just-
people that died were from infectious wounds caused by saltwater poisoning.
Oh.
Right, but like these people are chilling as if they're in a hot bath or something. Like there's no like, okay, that water, even if it, even it's in the middle of summer, which it is, it's July, that water is going to be probably in the 70s. After
Mhm.
hanging out in that water for a day, you're going to start getting hypothermia.
Yeah.
It's never addressed. It's like they're all hanging out in a hot tub, basically.
Yeah,
All of the things that are happening are like external, like sharks, like starvation, not like things that will actually fuck you up good, like saltwater poisoning and hypothermia.
they left a lot of story elements on the table that could have just ratcheted up the tension. This could have been like the sweatiest hour of a war film that you've seen in quite some time by just actually addressing every very real danger that was present in the moment, and they don't do a good job of it, and it's about to get a lot worse, because in the very next scene we find out Tom Sizemore has not made it. He's passed away.
So all the entertainment has completely drained from the film.
Yep. My light has gone out at this point watching this film, and they unceremoniously shove him off the raft into the water, and Nick Cage cries. I'm sorry, that is a good send off.
Yeah.
I can only hope
It's
I
pretty
go out
decent.
And then
that well.
and then a couple of sharks show up and split him open like a coconut.
Love the reference. Oh yeah, I do want to make a point of saying this. They push him off the raft into the water, and Nick Cage cries. I do too. And we get more text on the screen. It's now day 3, August 1st, 1945. 500 men remaining. Supplies depleted. We get a scene with the asshole officer who says there's an island nearby and they're going to try and make for it with anybody who isn't bleeding. I'm fairly certain this is the last time we see asshole officer, and I have no idea if he's supposed to have survived. I'm assuming him and everybody who leaves with him with his raft with all the supplies fucking dies unceremoniously in the middle of the ocean.
I totally forgot about this because there's no follow-up.
There is there's no catharsis even for the asshole character. Like at least in like Alien or Predator movies, any sort of creature feature, the asshole gets got and you get to see it and you get that moment of catharsis. That's the payoff for setting up your viewers to hate a character.
Yeah,
Not
I
here.
so forgot about this.
The thing is, historically speaking, they hallucinated that island, from my understanding. They thought they saw an island due to exhaustion and starvation, and those guys were never seen again.
That is I'm sorry, horrible tragedy. It happened in real life. That's an awesome element of the story that you could have used to punch up your script.
They completely gloss over it. Like, they don't actually mention that island did not, in fact, exist.
No, this is the only reference to it, and this is the last time we see these characters. Terrible, horrible, missed opportunity, unforced.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Lazy screenwriting.
Incompetent screenwriting.
I'm sort of mad right now about it. Now that I actually think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, this could have been so good.
I love reminding you of shit that happened in the movie where you're like, oh yeah, they never closed that loop. What the fuck? But of course, we got to cut back to the romantic subplot, guys. That's the compelling story.
That's why we're
Bama.
here.
Bama and D'Antonio. are in their own small raft together. And Bama admits that he is in love with Clara,
Intrigue.
the girl that D'Antonio wanted to propose to. And of course, right after this confession, D'Antonio gets attacked by a shark. He survives the initial attack, but has a fucked up leg. You know, Sizemore has died. We need another character with a fucked up leg. They're trying to maintain a quota here. But at this point, it's very important for us to cut to another important subplot, the racial tension subplot. So we get again a separate raft with the black and white sailor who were fighting and were in the brig and somehow survived. They didn't feel that was important to show in the actual scene where the ship is sinking.
No,
but
they
made it out. Yeah, no, they made it out, and they're on a raft together. And I think that's it. We see them for a second, then we cut back to Bama and his friend and D'Antonio, and D'Antonio asks,
Hang on. First, do you know who else is in a raft together?
Who?
Both our Patreon and the ads that we have to cut to.
Yep.
Those two things are on a raft together. That was so bad. I'm so sorry. That was awful, and I don't regret it, actually. Deal with it. Patreon.com/Nick Cage Fight. Go there and listen to this episode without the 2 minutes of ads you're going to have to sit through in, I don't know, like 90 seconds ish. That sounds about right?
That's how long ads good are. To me.
Yeah. So here they are. I need work on this.
You missed an opportunity to just do it as a jump scare. You should have just been like, "Oh shit, there's a shark."
Shit,
it's just their advertisers.
And there was a chance that, like, you know, the shark steamers and vacuums would have been the random ad pull for it. It would have
been too good, but instead it's probably gonna be like, I don't know, InfoWars the podcast.
No.
All right, here we go. Here's the ads. It's too late. Here they go. Jump scare, we're back.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I got you on the back end.
You got me on the front end too, because I was in the middle. I have to place myself. We cut back to Bama and D'Antonio, I think.
D'Antonio has been mortally wounded or wounded by a shark.
No, you were right the first time. Is mortally wounded.
Because I didn't know if I wanted to give away the game like that. So
no, it's perfect because like 2
minutes later, he's fucking dead.
Yeah, he just had a shredded leg, but now he's like, Bama, you gotta take care of Clara. I know you will because you just confessed that you love her.
And also, she's pregnant with my baby, so deal with that. I guess.
We don't get that yet. We don't get that yet. But yeah, that's also true. But yeah, no, D'Antonio dies and Bama is upset. I feel like he's got some conflicting emotions here, but I'm just assuming because the movie doesn't feel fit to kind of flesh this out at all. And then we cut back to one of the other groups, despite the fact that the title, the text on the screen split them up into Group A and Group B. It does not identify which one's which, just cuts between the two. But we cut to one of the groups, and there's another shark attack, bad CGI shark attack, and one of the older Marines gets eated. This guy was a really minor character. He like shows up to be like gruff in one scene beforehand, and this is where he bites the dust.
I gotta write him out somehow.
Yeah, they didn't have to write him in the first fucking place. But we get more text. It's now day 4, August 2nd, and 350 men are remaining. And I put specifically in the notes, this is where you can tell exactly when I paused the film to go back and watch the Jaws scene, because it says, according to Jaws, 316 men make it out. Let's see. I must have had like a sixth sense with it. I was like, these numbers aren't going to match up, but let's see what happens. So we get a shot of a bomber plane passing over the ocean at this point, and it looks like it's about to drop a bomb, thinking it spots a Japanese sub because
due to the oil slick.
Yes. There's a lot of oil in the ocean because of all of the mess of the Indianapolis sinking and so on and so forth. But before they release bombs, they see people in the water. So it looks like they spotted the survivors properly at this time. And so they shove some supplies out of the plane to drop in the water near the survivors. And I I have this in my notes. I'm not sure if I was confused at the time, but it looks like there's another plane in the area that gets this radio communication and does a water landing against explicit orders from base. This is the plane that Thomas Jane is in.
Yes, and this actually happened. This happened in real life. This is one of the things that's in this that is true. They were under explicit orders to not do a water landing, and the character Thomas Jane plays the only other like true character, like guy who existed in this movie. He
other than
said,
Hashimoto. Hashimoto.
Oh yes, sorry, you're correct. Yeah, Hashimoto is very real. They tell him like, do not make a water landing. And he's like, fuck this. These dudes are clearly dying. So he lands and they try to fit too many people on the plane that they can't take off the plane again. So they essentially use that as a home base. They get everybody out of the water and literally tie them to the wings of the plane so they don't have to deal with sharks. Yeah,
exactly. And,
as they wait for a battleship to come and actually get them.
Yeah, in the film, Thomas Jane like radios in. He's like, "Yeah, look, this plane is gonna fucking sink, so you better send some ships." Which I thought was interesting when they make the landing because it's like I was like, this plane is clearly not designed to take off from the water, but that was like you mentioned, it was apparently known well beforehand.
Yes.
So this is where we get the Jaws conflict because it explains that 317 men make it out of the water, and we get this via a scene shifting to, the men who concocted this scheme in the first place being informed that 317 men survived the sinking of the USS Indianapolis. And then we cut directly from there to Guam, a field hospital with the survivors. So, Cage is making the rounds talking to the men that made it out alive. And then we get the closing of the circle with the gambling sailor who wheels up to Bam in a wheelchair and returns D'Antonio's ring to him. And then we jump a month ahead.
Very tearfully. I thought it was a nice scene. I thought
that was decent acting. Yeah.
I thought it was well acted. I think it, comes across like how desperate he was. Even though the movie didn't show it, he did a good job of showing it. So again, shout out to basically every actor in this movie. They all did a very good job. The writing and the editing were the downfall of this film.
Yeah, they were trying to spin gold thread from Pile of Diarrhea.
Yeah, the performances, I have no complaints about the performances. The performances were really good.
Yeah.
I really didn't see anything egregiously bad. Everybody put their best foot forward, except for the fucking writers. I mean, there's only so much you can do.
They spent multiple years writing this script from what I was reading.
I fucking believe that.
I didn't go that much into a deep dive. I more or less did a deep dive into like the story behind it. There's a YouTube channel called History Buffs that kind of has poisoned my brain. So like every history-based movie now, I'm like, okay, let's see what actually happened.
Yeah. From what I'm seeing, they started writing this in 2011. So they had at least like 3 or 4 years before pre-production where they were trying to hash out the plot for this, and they just didn't get it.
They got the basic structure of a plot, but they fucked up the micro here. The macro had everything that they needed. You know what I mean? It was just the stepping from scene to scene. I don't understand it. But let's finish out the plot and then we can tear it to shreds a bit more. So we cut forward 1 month. The war is over. The bombs were dropped. The survivors return home. Cage gets a call in the middle of the night, but it's a nightmare. Sizemore comes back for one more scene. He drags Cage off the bed into the water. They're back in the ocean. And then he wakes up because his telephone is actually ringing. And he picks it up and receives what would nowadays just be a Twitter death threat. This is actually a phone call death threat. It turns out some people are very upset with what happened and are blaming Nick Cage. So then we got to cut to Bama. We got to close the circle on the romance subplot. Bama goes to see Clara. He proposes to her, and it's revealed that Clara is pregnant by Mike D'Antonio. Bama doesn't care, says the kid still needs a dad, asks her to marry him so he can help raise the kid. Real stand-up move. Cut back to Cage, where he's informed that Washington is trying to make him a scapegoat. And he should have had an escort on the way home in the first place. But either way, he's going to be put on trial. And we jump directly into the trial from there. They call to the witness stand the Japanese commander of the submarine that sunk the ship. He testifies that even if the ship had been zigzagging, as was protocol, they didn't stand a chance because the sub was too close. There was no way they could have missed. Unfortunately, Cage is still found guilty for not zigzagging the ship.
Which is such a crazy imagine like going to court and being like, you are found guilty of not zigzagging.
You're found guilty of zigging when you should have zagged. So I have a question, since you guys have been parsing the actual history of this. A Japanese commander testified at this court martial?
Yes,
really?
That is 100% true.
Yes, he did.
Isn't there
And
some
he
jurisdiction problems there, or
not after World? Once the war ended, Japan was under American, more or less control for a few years while they rebuilt their government.
Right. So there was no issues there, and also it's a military tribunal. So the laws that apply to us as citizens don't apply there. They can kind of call whoever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
It's a very loose court. Yeah, it's not great.
That seemed really odd to me. That was one of the few things where it was like, if I was playing the pick out what is clearly fake from this story, that's one I would have quibbled with, because it seemed odd to have an enemy combatant to testify in a military court. But
I mean, look, in 1946 we were hiring Nazis to build rockets.
Operation Paperclip and all that. The big thing is that since we more or less had control over Japan after World War II for a short period of time, he was actually promoted in the Japanese Navy, which was I thought it was actually disbanded post World War II, prior to it becoming the SDF, the Self-Defense Force. But apparently not. He was actually summoned by the U.S. military for this court martial. It wasn't like the Japanese government or anything on their behalf summoning him. It was a direct order for him to go and be a witness for this.
That's weird. See, I don't have any real firm understanding of the rules of international politics, especially in the aftermath of a war. But wouldn't that the International Criminal Court didn't have any part to play in any of this shakeout?
They were too tied up with the war in Europe.
Yeah, I believe the Nuremberg trials would have been their big thing at that point.
Because
also, this isn't a war crime we're talking about. This is a negligence hearing for the Navy specifically. He didn't have any criminal charges against him. These were misconduct charges.
Gotcha.
Right. Okay. And so they were, because if you remember, for World War II, once Germany was dealt with, kind of everybody was kind of done except for Japan and the United States. Russia was still in there a little bit because Japan was a threat to them. But Britain was basically done. Germany was done. France was done. All these countries that were in it were, it's over as far as they're concerned. They don't care about the Pacific theater.
Fair enough.
Also, I will say, the broad strokes in this movie are actually pretty accurate. There are some things, especially one thing later on, that is an inaccuracy, but for the most part, the things you see is basically how it happened. The reason I say broad strokes is because it's great white sharks. There were shark attacks, but not great whites. And the boat sank, but not like that. That would have killed everybody.
Gotcha.
But the normal, if you're trying to get a history lesson out of this, you'll get the broad strokes.
Okay. Well,
now, there was actually controversy about him being a witness, because the Japanese were actually being tried during the Nuremberg trials for Japanese war crimes, specifically in Manchuria and China. So, there was a public outcry against his testimony being used.
Yeah, I would have assumed there would have been, because like I said, it stood out as weird to me. I couldn't imagine with the tensions immediately in the aftermath of all of that. But back to the plot of the film, because this is a scene I do want to talk about, because we're given a very good scene in which, after the results of the trial, Nick Cage and what's the name of the Japanese sub-captain, Ryan?
Hashimoto, which I just found out, apparently after the war, he went on to become a Shinto priest at a shrine in Kyoto, which is interesting.
That's in the pre-credits of this film.
Oh, I didn't read those because they were in French for me.
But the scene that I'm talking about is McVeigh and him have a conversation.
I
And
don't think
it's
that happened. I
This
wasn't
probably
able to
didn't
find any
happen.
information about
sure,
that.
sure. Yeah,
Like,
I'm
this
not
is
arguing
prob-
about the historical accuracy of this part. The scene itself and the acting, however, is good. It's a
Yes.
performance that this movie is undeserving of because it is emotional. You know, it's two people on opposite sides of the conflict that have come to respect each other despite being, cause and effect of what in essence was a horrible tragedy. It didn't do anything to prevent the bombs from being dropped on Japan, and it was essentially senseless deaths, but incredibly well acted. They really got the gravitas of the emotion through here. It was just good acting, for sure, and the writing didn't ruin it. So I have to definitely call it out. It's one of the more powerful scenes in the film, and they salute each other before parting ways. And the last thing we get in the film, the movie ends with McVeigh committing suicide via revolver to the temple, which is fucking bleak.
Yes. Incredibly
Um,
bleak.
very much so. And it turns out that Bill Clinton posthumously pardons Captain McVeigh, which is also historically accurate.
Yes, that is
Yes.
historically accurate. My grandpa was actually stoked when that happened. It's the only time he ever said anything positive about Clinton.
There you go.
Yeah, because he was thoroughly pissed about the court martial. He was actually a Navy. I don't think he was an officer. I think he was a Navy private in the Pacific theater of the war. So he was right, basically there in terms of the internal politics of this happening.
I could imagine this pissing off a lot of the enlisted folk because again, it was just the suits in Washington passing blame for a bad strategy to try and obscure. See, I actually don't understand the strategic importance of not providing the escort on the way home. You know
I
what I
don't
mean?
get it. I don't understand. Like,
We were
I don't
running low on
understand-
ships at that point in the war, and as someone who has played Axis and Allies a bunch, you don't send a battleship without destroyers. So it was a big old fumble that they wanted to cover their asses for.
Yeah, because like I'm watching, I'm just like, well, what does it matter? Okay, it matters a lot if it's sunk on the way there, but what does it matter if
Oh,
the
yeah.
Japanese know? Like, they could have no idea the absolute destruction that was heading their way. Like, what do they think is gonna happen? Like, oh, a bombing? Like, who cares? Like, that just happens all the time. They couldn't have known what was happening with like the Manhattan Project. So I never saw the point of keeping that ship a secret anyway, because there's ships all in that theater to begin with.
Right.
Like at least afterwards, after you deliver the payload, I don't understand the "you were never supposed to be here" thing. Like, but before we move too far past it, so did Captain McVeigh actually commit suicide?
Yeah,
Yes,
but
yes,
he
he
did it
did.
way later. He was 70 years old. His like the way that
No,
they
no,
kind of
I thought it
film
was in 1970.
Oh, you know what? Hang on.
So still
no,
25
no,
years later?
1968, age 70.
Okay, 68. He was age 70 at that point. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Essentially, the like phone call that you see him get, like, that's real. He was getting that from people whose children died in the USS Indianapolis. He was getting letters constantly. His wife died in 1961, and he said he essentially suffered from intense depression.
Well, yeah, I mean, not for nothing. The amount of time that passed since the court martial, living with the weight of knowing you were an integral part of
The death of millions.
dropping of two atomic bombs, that's got to do something to your fucking brain. You know what I mean? And on top of a bunch of people being pissed, blaming you because you were scapegoated for the deaths of Americans and the ensuing sinking of your battleship.
On top of what I can only imagine him having to watch as people who were under him were eaten by sharks.
Yeah,
Like,
goddamn.
That's gotta fuck you up.
Now, doing a little bit of research on the court martial, I did find an interesting piece written in a history book by Richard Newcomb. During an interview with Charles McVeigh's father, Charles McVeigh Jr., he stated that the Admiral King, who had conducted the court-martial, King never forgot a grudge because King had been a junior officer under the command of McVeigh's father when King and other officers snuck women aboard the ship. McVeigh had a letter of reprimand placed in his record, and he basically claimed that King was using Charles McVeigh III to get back at him specifically.
Jesus. So it's shitty politics all the way down?
Yep.
Just a Matryoshka doll of shitty politics and backbiting?
Absolutely.
Capitalizing on a tragedy to settle petty grudges and cover their asses?
It would appear so. I mean, that's the history of the U.S. military, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say that's military showbiz, baby. Ugh, gross.
Yeah.
So not only is this a bad film, it's just genuinely bleak true story all around.
Yeah, it sucks. What's the opposite of Fox? Like, it's the opposite of Fox.
Yeah.
It castrates?
Yeah, I guess so. I would guess castration would be the opposite of Fox.
Yeah, this movie gelds. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I will put this in at least Josh's column for not recommended. Don't watch this. Just watch the clip where they tell the story about it in Jaws. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going.
Watch Jaws 3 or 4 times a year like I do. It's a good idea.
The speech in Jaws is more dramatic than the majority of this film, and it has better shark attacks. Which
so there was a lot of potential in this film, and they really glossed over the parts that were interesting, which is essentially the last 15 minutes, the screwing this guy over. Like there's the film. Like, if you took the first hour and a half and made that a half hour,
and I think without context, you wouldn't get that that's where it's going at all.
Yeah.
Right. No. You still give it context. You take the hour and a half that is them, the beginning of the movie, them being on the water. You condense that down to a half hour. There's only a half hour worth of action in that 90 minutes anyway. Then you take the whole court scenes that are the last 15 minutes and expand that out to an hour. You have a good 90-minute movie as far as
give it the Few Good Men treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what we get is essentially like the cliff notes of that trial at best.
Yeah, it's done in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like what they tried to do is I feel like a bunch of people got into a boardroom and said hey, everybody loved Jaws, but what about instead of one shark, there was 100? That's what I feel like happened.
This is the other option, because the movie that you just described would be interesting and I would watch it. But the other much more obvious option to go with is Titanic, but with sharks, and just focus on the shark. Save the money on the big sweeping real battleship shots or whatever they wasted on the shitty CGI planes and stuff.
The planes were actually real.
Not one of them.
Okay, at least the ones that Thomas Jane was flying, because they did use 2 World War II appropriate era planes in this film that were not CG. I think I know which one you're talking about. The one that flies by at the very beginning is clearly CG, but most of the plane stuff is not CG.
Sure, which is fine, but they could have saved their money on that and just leaned into the shark attack angle, not use CGI for that. Bring the Jaws shark puppet out of retirement, refurbish it a little bit. You know what I mean? And do just ham up all of the danger and the threat. Hundreds of men dying to exposure, shark attack, all of that stuff would have been harrowing and compelling and an actual homage to what these people went through, instead of just sort of half-assed a whole movie. They could have just whole-assed a part of it and stretched it out to a more manageable runtime, and we would have had a better film. And
I think this could have been capped out at hour 45 and it would have been a better movie.
And they had multiple paths they could have taken to get there. Military court drama or shark attack drama. They could have gone a couple of ways with it, and they just sort of split the gap, and the sum were lesser than the parts of the whole. It didn't work.
Yeah, or just a lost at sea drama where they kind of realize that everything around them is trying. Honestly, you could have had 50% less shark attacks and just had the environment be the villain instead of the shark. So just show people dying of saltwater infection, show people dying from hypothermia, because that shit is scary.
Yeah.
Honestly,
You could have played up the mirage of the island and that whole group. That could have been a solid.
that was a
15 to
giant
30
dropped
minutes.
ball.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think something else that could have made this movie a lot better is giving more time to Tom Jane to establish that character, because like he has no impact. If I didn't know that was Tom Jane and I wasn't looking out for him for the whole movie, I don't think I would have even noticed that character existed.
Honestly, could have saved the budget on securing Tom Jane. Don't get me wrong. I like the man as an actor, but you could have saved your money on that. I don't want to know what he made on the film, but shit, you know?
Yeah,
It's
oh, there's a bit of Tom Jane trivia I actually have. Did you know that he was also married to Patricia Arquette, same as Nick Cage?
They're Eskimo brothers.
They're Eskimo brothers, yeah.
Oh, good for them.
no wonder they didn't have any scenes together.
Yeah.
Good for them. I'm happy. All right. Are we ready to do some rankings here?
I think
Yeah,
so. It's
yeah,
gonna
let's
be
talk
low
about
on
the
most
rankings.
most counts.
I was about to say, so I normally go over the first four, but I think for this one, it's all right.
Last four.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's better than Next, it's better than G-Force.
Correct.
Yeah.
Actually, is it better than G-Force?
Yeah, it's better than G-Force.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
This is a real
better-
movie.
Is it better than Ghost Rider?
No.
Nope.
No, I'd
No?
rewatch Ghost Rider. I wouldn't rewatch this. And I think that's where the cutoff is going to be for most of these movies. Would rewatch, will not rewatch.
Yeah. Also, I think when we go over it in the next ranking show, Arbitration, I think we might have both Ghost Riders placed a little bit lower than they might ultimately need to be placed as we flesh this out with more movies.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Agree with you. Okay, for performance, better than Next, better than G-Force. I think better than both Ghost Riders as far as Nick Cage performance. I thought he played distressed pretty well, to be perfectly honest.
It's way more understated, but I agree. It's a better performance technically. Although I, again, would rather watch him in Ghost Rider than this.
Oh, same. I'm
like-
just talking about it, like isolated Nick Cage. I would actually put it like right above Sorcerer's Apprentice, right under Rumblefish.
I think that's reasonable, actually.
I'm gonna disagree here. They kept the reins on my boy on this film, and I don't think he was able to bring the caliber of performance that he could have. The last scene is the only thing that gives me pause. It's a great scene where they let him do his fucking job, but the rest of the film has him so contained. I think it fails to live up to even his straight played characters to a certain extent. So now this is me being an absolute coward because I couldn't say exactly what is better or worse here, but I think it's a little bit lower on the list than you guys agreed on.
All right, where are you aiming for then? Because I think above Sorcerer's Apprentice is right on the dot for. I think he was. I don't know if it was the production that was putting the reins on him. I think he was trying to be more respectful to the material.
That's another point.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Like, okay, if we are talking about if he's trying to be respectful and all this, I'd put it above Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah, because
But
like
Josh,
doing a little
if
bit of
you're-
reading.
What's below Sorcerer's Apprentice?
Yeah,
the-
I'd be curious about
The
that
two
too.
Ghost Riders.
I'd give it between those two. It's definitely better than the Ghost Riders.
But okay, also, so here's the other thing is that if he's trying to be respectful, I kind of put it where I was saying between Sorcerer's Apprentice and Rumblefish. If this is truly him just being restrained because he's phoning it in and he needs a paycheck, this might go under G-Force, because at least G-Force, he was putting on a voice.
So the one thing that makes me think that it is the respectful thing is that after filming in Mobile, Alabama for the shoreside scenes, he did actually speak with some of the survivors of the sinking of the Indianapolis.
All right. With the additional context, I'm back with the group. I
All
won't
right.
be the outlier here.
I mean, obviously, all of this is up for like interpretation.
Yeah.
The fight part of the Nick Cage Fight podcast is going to come when we really hash out these rankings. We'll get into playing devil's advocate and really arguing positions just to fully flesh out the ideas. But for now, we'll put the fight aside. I'm in agreement given the context.
Yeah. Okay. So now this movie was not unhinged at all, I don't feel.
Nah. Well, I mean Sizemore, but I don't think
Sizemore.
we're not on a Sizemore podcast.
Honorable mention.
So
Honorable mention,
Sizemore,
Tom
honorable
Sizemore.
mention.
real quick. So we'll do unhinged film first. Is this less unhinged than next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is in last place.
This is a movie that grandpas love or would love if they saw it. Which
Yeah,
means
this
it's
is
not
definitely-
unhinged at all.
This is definitely a grandpa movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have unhinged scene, which puts us in a weird place because this has a few unhinged scenes between the shark attacks, between Sizemore. Now, for unhinged scene, we normally contain it to a Nick Cage scene.
I think we have to keep it that way. I think if we start adding other actors to the unhinged scene ranking, I think we're on a slippery slope.
I think you don't have the appropriate amount of faith in the man who this podcast is about. I say put Sizemore cradling his own blown off leg on the fucking list. I'm drawing my Sizemore line in the sand. I want him cradling his own blown off leg on the list and see where it stands up to the non-unhinged Cage scene films. I want to see.
Okay,
where that
fine,
lands.
but I'm putting an asterisk on it.
Yes,
Fine.
there should absolutely be a qualifier for this
Okay,
one.
this
Add your
is
caveats.
this is a Roger Maris 61 situation, which you two do not understand. I don't think.
Is it a sports?
Explain it for the sports ball people.
That's a sports ball people. When Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's record of 60 home runs, he had 61 in a season. They put an asterisk next to it
because he didn't smoke as many cigars while he was doing it.
Yes, but also the commissioner of baseball loved Babe Ruth and did not like Roger Maris. I don't know why. I never looked into it that much. I don't care. It's a fucking sport. Who cares? Get over it. It's fine. Love what you love.
I mean, there's at least one baseball analogy that I think you might be able to shoehorn in. That one dude that pitched the no-hitter on LSD. That's a big old asterisk.
Oh, the dude who I can't remember his name. He played for
I'll
the
find it.
Pirates.
There's a documentary about it that rules. I love watching like sports documentaries. I never internalize anything about the actual sports. It's like the human stories I'm more interested in.
Baseball, the things that baseball players did, like absolutely is the coolest shit.
Wade Boggs.
Doc Ellis. Wade Boggs.
Wade Boggs.
Wade Boggs Carpet World.
One of these days I'm going to beat Boggs.
No, baseball players absolutely fuck. All right, so unhinged scene. All right, so if we are counting the Sizemore scene, which we already said that we are, it is more unhinged than Next, more unhinged than G-Force, more or less unhinged than Kill Chain.
Less unhinged than
unhinged than Kill. I don't know.
Nah, Kill Chain has some great scenes with Cage.
Yeah, it does. It's got him getting drunk, yelling about whole
laughing.
Backstory, laughing.
Okay, so I just want to make a quick observation here. We have Sizemore being very, very unhinged, and it is not as unhinged as fucking Nick Cage in Adaptation. Like,
correct. Yes.
Let's really think about that for a minute. That we're talking about one of the more unhinged scenes that I've ever seen in a movie, and it is bottom 5%.
Which reinforces my original point. I put Sizemore on the list with an asterisk because I believe in our boy. 9 times out of 10, he's gonna beat him on a bad day. On a bad day, okay? You can't hold a candle to unhinged Nick Cage, but still, Sizemore earned his shot.
Yeah. All right. I'm not angry about it.
No. I respect where you're coming from here. How do we think his hair was in this?
He's got the high and tight.
It's bad hair.
Boring haircut.
It's bad hair. They fucked up his sideburns. And they really leaned into the receding hairline, I'm assuming, to show the age of the character. It's bad hair. It's not the worst we've seen, but it's bad hair.
Okay, so the bottom two, I think, stay the bottom two, G-Force and Ghost Rider. Because obviously G-Force is no hair. Ghost Rider is CGI hair. Adaptation, bald wig hair.
No, not going higher than that.
Nope. Adaptation is stuck there. If you make your hair bad on purpose, you're not juking the system here. You're not rigging the numbers. We will place you accordingly.
So it's worse hair than Adaptation?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
Because they tried and failed.
In Adaptation.
Well, no. In Adaptation, they were purposely bad. This was an attempt to make real human hair, and it didn't work out.
All right, so we have our rankings for this week, which means there is one last thing to do, and that is talk about what's happening next week. And let me tell you, I'm excited.
We got a good one?
Oh, we have one of my favorite Nick Cage movies. To give it away a little bit, in an alternate timeline, The Fast and the Furious only has one movie, and this movie is currently on the 11th version.
Ooh, I know what we're talking about.
Because it's gone in 60 seconds.
All right, awesome. I'm going to watch the original as well for this one, because the original is just a 45-minute chase scene, and it rules.
I like the original. We're getting a lot of, like, we really got to, like, get some Patreon stuff up, because
yeah, I'd love to talk about just 45 minutes of cars bashing into each other for
because
episode.
I do really enjoy the original Gone in 60 Seconds. We have the original Bad Lieutenant.
I'm going to make a confession to you both now, and just you two. So listeners,
mute yourselves.
Count to 6 and then come back.
I've never seen Gone in 60 Seconds, the original or this one.
I remember Cage having some good hair in this one.
Oh, this is a tremendous Cage hair movie.
I'm excited to see it.
I don't remember who else is in this one, though.
Oh my God, it has a hell of a cast. Hang on, I have to pull it up because I can never remember the dude's name.
While you're pulling it up, I want to ask you a question, because you said in an alternate universe this would have gotten all of the movies and Fast and the Furious would have only had one. Would you have counted down or up? I would assume you'd count down, right? So
yeah. So
seconds,
I think it would be Gone in 59 seconds. Yeah,
Gone in 50 seconds. You got to tighten the window in which they can pull off this caper, right?
Series goes on long enough. Gone in a picosecond.
All right, this movie, Angelina Jolie, Giovanni Ribisi is in it, who is fucking great. Fucking Robert Duvall is in this movie.
Robert Duvall.
Shit.
Scott Conn is in this movie.
Oh, shit. Timothy
Olyphant is in this movie.
All right,
guys, while you're sweating, Will Patton is
Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah,
there's a doctor of hair.
This movie.
Oh, it's got the fucking guy from Snatch. What the hell?
Movie fucks so goddamn hard.
Yo, by the way, we immediately have a Thomas Jane connection with the Punisher movie, because Will Patton is in this film, who was in the Thomas Jane Punisher movie as well. While you guys are nerding out about the cast, can I tell you something? A quick secret about the writer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he also wrote Con Air, one of the holy trinities.
Oh shit. Yeah, that's why this movie's so good. And all right, what I will say, I already made the Fast and Furious connection. Nowhere near the same movie. This is a heist movie, and while there's heists going on in Fast and the Furious,
he also wrote High Fidelity. What the hell?
Yeah,
he wrote the fucking Venom movie too.
Dude, all killer, no filler. Kangaroo Jack. That movie sucks.
All right, I'm fucking super excited. Okay.
Jumanji, the next. Oh, he's writing the new Jumanji movies.
Numanji. That's awesome. That's great.
He wrote Disturbing Behavior. That actually is not an awful movie. Oh, he took a huge break and then just wrote Jumanji, Venom, and then Jumanji again. Oh shit. He screen doctored the original Spider-Man as well as Armageddon.
Interesting.
Wait, the Raimi one?
Yeah. He script doctored that shit.
Dude, I'm in. I need a palate cleanser,
as well as maybe Cloverfield.
All right,
because he had a special thanks in Cloverfield, which tells me that
he was the monster that Cloverfield was based on.
Well, that he may be like a script doctor, as well as like for Armageddon and Spider-Man, and Runaway Jury.
Well, special thanks sometimes just means that he helped finance the film by like introducing two dudes.
Yeah, very true. Pain and Gain 2 is a very fun movie.
I'm excited by this. This is fantastic. This is exactly what I need.
You should be.
After Men of Courage.
Yeah, we needed a good one.
All right, it's time for the plugs. While we're still there, please give us a follow on Twitter. Interact with us. You can find us at cagefight_pod. And Ryan, why don't you drop your Twitter handle? You're constantly watching movies.
And my Twitter is @HimboFet. and I watch movies and I post the information about them. And I occasionally talk about how I want to cuckold Spider-Man, and that's why I like redheads.
Yeah. I mean, you're the only one who actually has you fill your life with rich cinematography, old or obscure movies that don't necessarily involve Nick Cage, whereas Rich and I are kind of laser focused. But Rich, what's our Patreon again? I can never remember.
Oh, our Patreon is like super nice and easy. It's just Nick Cage Fight. Patreon.com/Nick Cage Fight.
That's super easy to remember. One of these days I'm gonna get it. I promise.
Yeah, just 9 more people sign up for the $3 tier.
Force
the
video game speed run.
We are coming for you, Chris.
I want it so bad. That's really it.
I will stream all of my attempts too. Like, I'm gonna train on stream.
That's the way to do it. And I'll definitely be in the cheering section.
Well, yeah, you have to practice on stream, because what happens when you hit that perfect run?
Well, then
it's not recorded. You're just like, oh no.
Well, we're gonna have the Guinness record people on standby.
Oh, we can
Guinness doesn't. Yeah, you can buy the Guinness shit. You got to actually get like I think it's Twin Cities does the rankings. There's also speedrun.com. I'm gonna get on fucking GDQ with this piece of shit game.
I thought that's why we were shilling for the Patreon, because we needed to pay Guinness to.
We gotta pay Guinness for my fake record. Just like Tommy Tallarico.
I was about to say, didn't H Bomber Guy teach us anything?
Yeah, he did.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we're wrapped here, folks. As always, listener, we appreciate you.
Bye-bye.